Hmm.
How can, especially when you lose crypto, how can a blockchain forensics firm help in that sort of situation? A lot of people call me and they say, "What can I do?" And I say, "Well, first of all, you got to document the theft, because prove that it actually happens. You need to document it, and you need to report it to the usually the FBI."
Hmm.
What are your perspectives on that?
In a lot of in a lot of ways, the reason why we exist, or at least perform, or at least spearhead the investigations portion of our work, is because there's a drastic need for it, because law enforcement is catching up. This is a crime that, once it really started to take shape and form of it in like its organizational standpoint, and it got really sophisticated. Cops weren't ready for this. I mean, we're talking about international jurisdictions. We're talking about the capabilities of the investigating officer, like their fundamental understanding of crypto, what access to tools that they have. What's the funding of the department? If grandma in some really rural town gets scammed of her crypto and she goes to the local sheriff or constable or whatever, like, what's he going to be able to do? He's never even heard of crypto, or maybe he knows very little about it, right? So you have this system in place where you have these crimes that are continuously happening because they're successful and lucrative, and they're just mounting up with an investigative force that there's just not enough. Every case that gets reported, I mean, by sheer virtue of the volume that we're talking about, there's going to be triage. They're going to have to go after the cases that happened most recently, the most money was lost, or maybe the best evidence. And if it's not an easy layup, then there's a good chance that the case is just sitting, right? And if they're the guys that are supposed to be doing that work, then who else can? So we kind of step in that aspect, kind of like a quasi forensic accountant slash private investigator. And our job is to tackle that very difficult tracking and tracing, or at least the part that requires the most expertise. And once we do our work and we report our findings, then it's still in the hands of law enforcement, which is why this is a tricky thing, right? Because we're not cops. We don't have the legal authority to do that, to go after this money. Our job is basically to report the facts as we see them, and then, hopefully that would at least make it easier for whatever investigating agent to, verify the data and say, oh, okay, so I have to go after this Binance account. And then he goes through and does his standard legal work, and, subpoenas, and happy ending for everybody. So that's the way it's supposed to work. And I think, over time, our services under that kind of situation will be needed less and less. Law enforcement will be better and better at it. But it's funny because now it hasn't really changed the fact that we're needed. We're just kind of needed more now in the courts, it seems, with civil litigation, things like divorce, things like business dissolutions, asset provenance, a whole lot of things that need to be, reported on, forensically reported on, and documented for whatever situation that's before it. And it's a really interesting way, I feel like, to measure adoption in general. I mean, if it's, you're always going to hear about crypto when it's doing well, but like when it starts like showing up in the courts consistently for this, that, and the other, then it's getting somewhere. It needs to be talked about more, right?